Okay, now we have Mike Taylor. Now, everyone knows Mike. He's a learning consultant and he's going to be talking about ideas L&D should steal from marketing. Have an awesome time, Mike. Over to you. Over to you.
Thanks, Kath. What a fabulous day. It's so many really great insights and information and tips, and I hope I can just kind of share a fraction of that and kind of keep that momentum going today. So I just want to talk about, sort of a few of the things that L&D should steal from marketing. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. Don't worry about taking notes. I've got links and I'll send you everything at the end. All this stuff will be posted on my website as well. So we will just jump in and keep going. So first question that I get is why marketing? Why would we, as a profession, why would we look to the marketing field? And I think really, if we think about it, L&D and marketing, we share a couple of really important common goals. And both of us need to, we need to get people's attention. And then once we've gotten that attention, we need to help them think and act in new ways. So L&D is doing that, marketing is doing that. And I would propose that quite often we're going about that in drastically different ways. As an example, and I think kind of captures the spirit of that pretty well. So imagine, you're at your weekly meeting or something and your boss comes in into the training department and says, hey, we've got a project and we need to sell more hamburgers. And so what I envision, and take a second to imagine what you think something like that might look like coming from a training department. I would venture to say in a lot of places that the outcome may look a little bit something like this. So it's going to be some facts and figures or whatever the case may be. Whereas if we contrast that, and if we take that same project and we go over to the marketing department and we say, hey, same project, we've got to sell more hamburgers, they're probably going to come up with something that looks a little bit more like this. And so what I'd like to ask you here, and if you could just drop this in the chat, what are the difference between these two approaches? And maybe why, what are some of the reasons we do it differently? So Hannah, if you might share some of those as they come in.
Hey, Mike. We've got simplicity, clear messaging, too much information in the L&D approach, visualization, some are more visual, no use of visual language.
Yep.
And that's all we've got for now.
All right, really great start. And I just want to kind of use this. I'm always curious to have this conversation to see what people pick out. But as we go through here, we're going to kind of unpack this a little bit and see some of the things that are at play. So we're going to give you sort of a brisk walk through 5 things that I personally think are worth stealing from marketing. And the first one is this whole idea of marketers understand that they need to speak to our lizard brain. So in short, humans have 2 different types of thinking. We have this conscious logical side, which is, if you're solving math problems and planning and all that sort of stuff. And then we also have the second type, which is our subconscious or emotional. So reacting to things that scare us and that sort of stuff, things we're not really consciously thinking about. So really quick poll. Let's use your chat window here and place your vote. How much of human behavior do you think is driven by our conscious thinking? So just drop one of those letters into the chat and we'll see. Looks like there's some diversity here. Hannah, do you see any clear-cut favorites?
Oh, it's quite diverse from my perspective. I would maybe say A and B seems to stand out a little bit more, but it's pretty even.
Okay, cool. I should know that this is a super smart group, so a lot of folks may be getting this one right. So if we continue here and find out the answer, there's some research that says that 95% or more of our brain activity is subconscious, and it's driving the vast majority of our behavior. And what's happening, we started this section off talking about the lizard brain, and there's sort of 3 major parts of our brains. The brainstem, that's sort of controlling things like survival, keeping our heart beating, that sort of stuff. The limbic system largely controls our emotions. So both of those are on the subconscious side, and those are relatively old. Those are the things we sort of evolved out of the swamps with, eons and eons ago. And then the neocortex, which is largely the driver of our conscious thinking, evolutionarily is relatively new. And so when we're talking about these two subconscious thinking parts, that's what we're talking about when we say they're speaking to the lizard brain. They're speaking to our subconscious. Now, just to give you a relative sense of these two types of thinking. So our conscious thinking, it's newer, it's weaker, it tires easily. So think if you've tried to multitask, that's pretty tiring. And it's not automatic. We've got to consciously put effort into that. There's some science that says that our conscious thinking processes about 40 bits of data per second. And if we contrast that with what's happening on our subconscious side, that's our older lizard brain side. It's much more dominant. It's always on. It's automatic. And the researchers say that we can process 11 million bits of data per second. So you can see how much more powerful that side of our brain is. And that lizard brain really is something that we need to A, understand, and then B, sort of speak to and deal with. So when we're talking about the subconscious mind, it's almost like we have a supercomputer that's loaded with this database of sort of pre-programmed behaviors. And one of the super fascinating things to me is that these behaviors have mostly formed and developed by the time we're 6 years old. Right? Like, I think that, to me, when I first learned that, like, that's pretty powerful fact. And here's a chat question that I would like to ask, and I always love to see these answers. So if you were doing what you do and designing for a 6-year-old instead of whatever audience that you normally design for, would you do anything differently? And how would you design differently if you're designing for a 6-year-old? Go ahead and drop some of those into the chat window. So we've got language, edutainment, fun, colorful, and simple. Yes. Less info, more colorful, visual, short, happy music, game elements. And those are all really good. And I would say those, we could probably come up with a few more. My biggest question for you then is, as adults, which of those things do you not like? Because if I'm going to have a learning experience or an entertainment experience, I like all of those things. There's some learning science that supports the benefit of all of those things. So simple, color, all of those things we should keep doing. And I think that's one takeaway that you could take away is a lot of things that I see from day to day could be improved if we put that same lens as if we were designing for that 6-year-old. So really, to sum up this first section here, really we're living in this ultra modern world, but we're navigating it with brains that sort of primarily developed as we navigated and evolved up out of the swamps. And one thing marketers are really good at is A, they recognize that and they work with the way that our brains operate and not against it. So that's the first one. The next one here is marketers really understand how little people pay attention. And I want to show you a video here. This is a great little ad from a car company, a Czech car company. And I'm going to play a video, so I need to swap one thing here to make the video work. Do that here really quick. Pop back. Apologies for the Zoom dance. All right, cool. So I'm going to play a video here. I just want you to watch the ad and just take it all in. So here we go.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look?
All right, pop into chat if you caught all of the things that were changing, and a whole lot of things were changing in there. So I'm curious how many folks caught what was going on in that ad. Did anybody catch anything changing? I didn't catch anything changing either, so don't feel bad. Yep, car for the most part. Okay, cool, very good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the second half of that ad, and we're going to see what was really happening that maybe some of us may have missed.
Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so. So there we have it. Proof that the new Skoda Fabia is truly attention-stealing.
All right, let me just toggle our video stuff here while you guys react to that for a second. And we're back. So the point of that was, right, like pretty amazing. We have this intuition. Daniel Simmons did an experiment. If anybody's seen this, has been 6 or 8 years ago, the invisible gorilla. I don't know if you've seen that. It's two teams in white shirts and black shirts, and they're passing basketballs, and you focus on the white team, and literally a gorilla walks through the video, and over half the people miss it. And it's this concept of inattentional blindness, and we have this intuition. If I'd have told you before I showed the video, hey, I'm going to show you this video, all these things will change and you're not going to notice, you would think I was crazy. And so a lot of times our intuition sort of mislead us. And really the main point, and marketers know this as evidenced by that ad, they took advantage of that nicely. But some really important information that we assume is obvious, it can easily get overlooked. So that attention is really important. And without that initial attention, really nothing else after that matters. It could be the best thing in the world, but if it's not gained our attention, it's really irrelevant. So a couple of things that our lizard brain notice. I'm just curious here, the icons will give you a little bit of a cue, but there's 3 big things that our lizard brains are sort of wired to recognize. Does anybody want to take a guess at what those big 3 categories might be? Just drop it into chat if you have any guesses. Emotion is related to all of this. Very good, Emma. Thank you. Really, the 3 things that we are just hardwired, we can't turn this off when we're experiencing our environment. It's, can I eat it? Can I have sex with it? Or can I keep the species alive? Or will it kill me? And I guarantee you, if you can work that into some of your courses and learning experience, you will get attention. And if you can do that, talk to me because I want to know how you do it. Really, it's kind of more often the typical things that we think about. Benefits, is it enjoyable? What are the consequences? That's easier to work in, but just understanding the things that we're looking for. And one of the ways that marketers leverage this and focus attention, Mel actually mentioned this a little bit in her session earlier. There's a special part of our brain built specifically for recognizing faces. And if you remember when Mel showed her heat map, this is a heat map of an ad. You'll see this in ads a lot. If you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere. But the heat map, we're wired to look at faces. And so this heat map is showing that in this ad. But what marketers will do is they will use that to their advantage, and they'll take the eye gaze of that person or that face, and they'll direct it at the content they want you to see. And so you can see here how that impacts the heat map of what people look at. We don't think about it. It's totally subconscious, but everybody does it. We're just wired that way. And here is a big news flash that we all know. Maybe not everybody always admits it, but really nobody wants to read our stuff. Nobody wants to read anything. I've yet to meet the person who has somebody calling them every day waiting for the newest release on the LMS. There's a really great book. Stephen Pressfield's a great writer, and he encapsulates this, I think, probably one of the best ways that I've seen do that. And what he says is streamline your message, pare it down. We talk about, on my team, we talk about unpacking things if it's not really in its clearest, easiest to understand form, and really being ruthless about streamlining your message. And then the second step for him is make its expression fun. So that's the emotion that we've been talking about that's been mentioned a couple times. Make it sexy or interesting or scary or mysterious. We want people to have that emotional connection so that it's compelling and they want to come in and read it or watch it or see it or whatever the case might be. And then we just do that with everything that we do. And I'd add a third piece, and this is my third edition piece here. And if we make it visual, so making things visual, I think will support both of those first 2 points. So visuals can carry a lot of the messaging, and it's definitely makes it easier to connect with emotion. So those three things, if we just did these three things with everything we worked on, streamlined, made it emotional, made it visual, I think a lot of teams and a lot of us could have pretty significant improvements in the type of work that we do. The third one here, power of first impressions. People say, oh, well, I would never judge a book by its cover. They may mean well, but it's really not true because we can't help it. The things that we see and hear and feel right up front on our first encounter, it colors the rest of the things that we see, and it impacts how we process it. So one of the things that is really important that I think sometimes as learning and development people, we sort of forget about or maybe don't think it applies to us is the simple fact of titles and headlines. So 8 out of 10 people will read the headline copy, but it takes a lot more effort to get them in to read the rest of it. So only 2 out of 10 will come in and read the rest. There's a lot of reasons for that. But when you know this is what you're competing against, you've got to really put some attention and work into your headlines to make them all of those things, appealing, emotional, and all that sort of stuff. There's a couple of really good marketing tools that I like to use. One from CoSchedule, and then there's another one from ShareThrough. There's several others. But even just the simple fact of rethinking your titles can be a big impact to the way people are reacting to your content. So here's the one from CoSchedule that I use quite a bit. You could go, it's a free tool. You can go there and sign up and register. You just type in a title, you hit analyze, and it's going to give you a score. So you can do as many of these. It's almost like a game. It's kind of fun, actually. So the higher the number, the better. So you can see the red ones there, PowerPoint for beginners, PowerPoint 101. That might be pretty typical for a lot of training departments. And you want to try to boost those scores. And the nice thing that I like about this is this tool will actually give you some feedback. It's going to tell you your use of common words, emotional words, and power words. And it'll actually have some ways that you can learn to make your titles and headlines better. And then along with headlines, you may have heard this said in your work before, where it doesn't matter what it looks like, just get it out, just get it finished, just whatever the case might be. But there's really some science behind it. It really does matter what it looks like. You know, one of the pieces of information is from Stanford University, and they did a study of the credibility of online content. And what they found was that 94% of those first impressions are design related. And what they did, and this is really fascinating too, they were flashing images to the participants for fractions of a second. So 300 thousandths of a second. And there were even some studies that they saw this effect hold true for less than 30 thousandths of a second. So that's faster than our conscious can even process it. We're making decisions, and there are implications for the design methodology, the design and what it looks like. We don't even know about it, and this stuff is happening. So it really is important, and our unconscious mind can really form those likes or dislikes before we even know about it. So if you ever have anybody tell you it doesn't matter what it looks like, you can point to this and say, yeah, actually, it really does. So here's a typical, this is a course that I took years and years ago. So this is sort of abusing that concepts that we're talking about. You know, if you get my attention in the beginning and then you lay a bunch of this junk in front of me and it's kind of ugly and it's not very well designed and it's not helpful, like that's the training version. Not any people here, of course, but you know, in general, versus using some of those principles that we talked about. So visual, colors, simple, and clean. And so if those were the two same courses with basically the same content, you know, which of these two courses would you choose to take if you had the choice? I think I know the answer. If you were to drop an A or a B in the chat. Yeah, 1000%. And so that's one example that I see a lot is the A side of people are just trying to get stuff done and get it out without the consideration for some of these things that we've been talking about. I think some people don't really think it makes that big of a deal, big of a difference, but it really, really does. Now, this is one of my favorite ones. So marketers are fantastic at telling stories. I think part of the creativity that marketers get are the constraints. So trying to pack a message into a 30-second or even 15-second ad sometimes forces that creativity, whereas as L&D people, we often don't have those type of constraints. So another fictional project, and the boss comes into the training department and says, okay, well, we need to communicate that Subaru makes really safe cars. And if we imagine ourselves sitting in the conference room in the training department, we might see something like this, where they're going to pull out facts and figures and safety crash data and charts and tables and all that sort of stuff, which is okay to inform what you're doing. But if we remember, our logical mind's not really the one that's driving a lot of our actions. So what a marketer would do is a story. So let me toggle the Zoom controls here, and we'll do one more short video. And then we'll see how this one does.
They lived. They lived. They lived.
We lived, thanks to our Subaru.
Love. It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
So I'm going to unshare here. I think pretty powerful. That's one of the most powerful messages I think that I have seen. So which one of those are more impactful? Which one of those do you think are going to persuade more people that Subaru builds safe cars? I think it's pretty clear. To me, it's pretty drastic difference. So there's also certain special parts of our brain that are wired for story, and marketers are really, really fantastic at that as well. Here's another one I think we have an opportunity as an industry to do is a lot of times in my experience, we've been a little unnecessarily formal, right? Like it's okay to have fun at work. Doesn't mean you're not doing serious work. Doesn't mean you're abusing that. But have a little bit of personality, do something different. If you do something out of the ordinary, that's even going to help you get that attention that we're talking about. I won't play it today, but there's one of my favorite videos. If you've never seen any of the Dollar Shave Club ads, really, really fantastic. Lots of personality, and it's a really significant contrast to their competitors, and it helps them stand out, and it's driven a lot of their success. So that the link to all of these stuff are in the resources. I think that's in the app. I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end to grab them as well. But if you haven't seen that one's a really super fun ad that we could borrow some things from for training as well. Cool. So the last one here, number 5, we've gotten it down. Marketers are really great at taking a campaign view of the world. There are a lot of particularly compliance-driven things in the training and L&D world where we want to check the box and we want to do the one and done, and there are occasions for that, and that's okay. But if we really want to reach sort of behavior change and impact and meaningful changes, campaigns are a lot better approach. One great easy way to get started with this type of thinking or this type of campaign work are email marketing tools. There are a ton of these. I've used MailChimp, and I've used, oh, now I'm forgetting the other one. Anyway, I've used MailChimp on a lot of projects. I can't forget, I'm blanking. Anyway, they're really, really nice. There's tons of these. You can try them for free. You can set things up. By spreading out your learning and your content over time, right? Like we can implement some spaced learning things. Just the perfect candidate for that, I think, is the annual compliance training. And if we say somebody takes a 30-minute course once a year and remembers everything and changes their behavior, I think we're sort of not being totally honest with ourselves. But this is one of the easy applications of campaign learning: is take your compliance course, split it apart, reinforce what's in the course, and drip that out over the course of the entire year and make it a campaign. Super, super easy to do. As I said, there's some free trials you can get started. MailChimp will give you 2,000 subscribers, so pretty generous for trials and betas. And the nice thing, you can spend a small investment to set these up, and if you do it the right way, they're largely automated and they'll almost run themselves. And we can do this either, as I mentioned, to sort of support or enhance existing programs, or you can do them as standalones. So the nice way that you can connect with other programs you've already got. You can also pull content that you've already got, split it out into email format. So lots and lots of great ideas there. Another great thing that these email platforms do is they're going to give you some data. So a lot of people in L&D always talk about data, and some people are not always sure how to get started. What do I do with it? So with some of this email data, you can see opens and who clicked what, and I can get even down to a granular level that, Chris clicked this link and not that link. So there's some really valuable data in there that we can see what's working and what's not working. The other thing, I think this is the really cool part that some of these campaign thinking approaches will let us do, is serve up dynamic content. So for instance, I can give unique content based on a job role or a physical location. Maybe there's different information for different groups like that. I can do different content based on, did they click this link? Did they open this email? I can really, what I'm trying to do when I get into this type of dynamic content is we're really trying to get the right content to the right people and at the right time. And this is a really great first step down that path in a way that's accessible and easy to implement without a ton of technical skills. So this is a tweet that I saw, it's been a few years ago now, and this is a great example. So this was a password reset, which a lot of us have, 30, 60, 90 days. We've got that data. So by taking that password reset date and pulling that into our email platform, you can create content. In this case, they not only did they send, hey, your password's about to be reset, but they gave them some resources and a tool to check the strength of their password, right? Sort of real-time performance support right in the flow of what they have to do anyway. Really super fantastic example of that, just using a simple email marketing platform. So you can get a little bit more complicated than that. So some trigger event, whether it's a new registration to a course, a new employee, maybe a new user to a system, course enrollment, course completions. A lot of these actions can be triggers for these campaigns. But really what happens here is I can send out that initial email based on the trigger, and then I can kind of watch what happens and build out these sort of action trees of what happens. So for example, once the email is sent, if they open it, then they're going to send down, they open the first email, then they get a second email with a video. If they open that, then they're going to get an ebook. And you can just sort of set up these campaigns. And like I said, with a little upfront investment, these are automated and you're hands off at that point, and you can just kind of sit back and look at the data, see what's happening, maybe tweak it. But lots and lots of potential here. You know, we can even mix channels. We could mix email with Slack or SMS messaging, connect it. Devlin showed Zapier is a great tool where we can connect a course completion or enrollment automatically with an email campaign like MailChimp or something like that. So tons and tons of potential for what we can do as L&D professionals. There's a couple of relatively new tools that have been built specifically for L&D people like us. So definitely worth checking out. Sparks is one, and Learning Pool has a new one called Waves that have all of those similar capabilities built in. In general, the marketing technology landscape is massive. So this is a recent roundup of marketing tools. I think there's 8,000 tools in here. And if you look at the categories, a lot of things that overlap with us: content and experience, social and relationships, data. If you haven't yet, go out and browse something like this. I can almost guarantee you that you'll find something useful in whatever it is you're doing in the context of your role. You can get a copy of this. You can see this MarTech 5000. Again, this is all in the resources that I'm going to give you here. And so those are the 5 things that I think really are worth stealing. So speak to the lizard brain, recognize the challenges of gaining attention, leverage and make use of first impressions, don't short sell it, make use of stories, and then switch your perspective to some campaign type thinking. So with that being said, we'll take a couple questions and comments. If you could finish one of these sentences in the chat, that would be great. I'll also take some questions. The link at the bottom here, if you drop your email there, I'll send you all the links and copies of the slide. That'll also give you my email. So if you have a question, just hit reply. That'll come right back to me. And we'll see what we see here in the chat section.
So I've got a question, Mike, that happened a bit earlier on, so you may have missed it. So I'll just read that out. So we had a question from Karen. She said, I prioritize working with visuals, but how do you combine or balance it with inclusive design, for example, for visual disabilities?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's almost, it almost diverts us into 2 paths. So I'm not a accessibility or expert in that. I would think, things like alt tags, you're going to try to make those as descriptive as possible. But I'm not going to profess to be an expert in that. I think really the primary things that apply to all avenues here, whether it's accessibility or not, is the whole concept of really make it streamlined, pare it down to its, essentials, and involve emotion. So you can still do that in an accessibility environment. I think if you can do those 2 things, the visuals help for those 2 things, but I think you can still do those 2 things without necessarily having to have the visuals. That's a great question. Any other questions here? I see Emma's got a question about learning campaign effectiveness. So there is tons and tons of research. There's different spins and different slants on it. There's some marketing. There's also some campaign learning research. So Will Thalheimer has a load of stuff on spaced learning, spaced repetition. That's fabulous. So definitely check out Will's stuff if you're interested in that. And if there's any other specifics, drop me a note and I can point you to some marketing stuff. Just looking at anything else? Did I miss anything else, Hannah? Anything from earlier?
No other questions, but the chat's been incredible during your session. I think like people have been talking about learning campaigns. I think that's been sort of a theme that everyone's getting excited about. And yeah, you did an incredible session. Thank you so much, Mike. It was really insightful. The videos were great and just, yeah, a really great reminder of how marketing can help us create better learning. So yeah, we're super inspired from our end and it looks like the audience is too. But yeah, I guess we'll see if any more questions come through on the chat.
Yeah, one thing I would add while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions is, Devlin's session earlier and Zapier and some of these no-code tools, they're really exploding right now, and they're really unlocking a lot of these things that allow things like campaigns and connecting different systems with each other in an automated way. So if you haven't heard of no code or you haven't looked into it, amazing things that can be done without requiring you to actually know code. So
we've got a question that's come through, Mike. Emma would not like to know, or she said you're the curation king, and do you use curation tools?
Yeah, I do use curation tools quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I was just talking about a new one that I found today. And I think curation is a huge tool in the right context. So I could talk tools for like days and days on end. But sort of Feedly is one that I've found sort of central to my curation process for a number of years now. So feedly.com. And then a new one that I'm really excited about is called BubbleUp, BUBLUP, BubbleUp. It's a really nice looking one for curation if you're doing any curation stuff.
Great. We've also got a question from Neerad. He's asked, are there any further readings about what we can learn from marketers?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things in the resources. Couple other really good sites. The Content Marketing Institute is a fabulous resource. Copyblogger is really good around writing. Writing marketers, I think, are some of the best writers that I have seen. So those are two really great places to start. If I had to pick one, I would start with the Content Marketing Institute because they've got such a wealth of information on this kind of stuff across a range of topics. Great question. And thanks for the link, Emma.
Awesome. We've run out of time, Mike, but thank you so much for your participation in the conference. It's been amazing to learn from you, and you can see everyone in the chat has learned so much. So thank you, and everyone get set for the next session.